My name's Stephanie and I'm with the African Earth Observation Network at Nelson Mandela University, and the scientists there are really interested in Earth stewardship science. My specific interest is in ocean health and the roles that marine mammals, or whales and dolphins in particular, play as indicators of ocean health. South Africa is really exciting in that respect because a lot of the research we're currently doing is very novel. We're doing a lot of baseline research because we don't really know what is happening in the oceans of South Africa, and yet it's a biodiversity hotspot, so there's a lot of different species and a lot of research to be done. Yet at the moment we're also facing a lot of changes. There are a lot of anthropogenic impacts potentially happening. We have a lot of coastal development, ports being built or expanded, and we have a lot of deep sea exploration, specifically for oil and gas. So in that context, it is really important to understand what the ocean of South Africa is like before we as humans go and have a potential impact on them. When I started working in Algoa Bay, there were a lot of planned developments or ongoing developments in the bay. There was plan for a big new deep water port, for a large marine protected area, and also a number of fish farms in the bay. And yet we didn't have a good understanding of the distribution, both in space and time, of the whales and dolphins in that bay. So after a 3-year survey to really find out the distribution of these animals, we found one of the surprising results was that we found a large number of baleen whales with their calves. So it appeared that we had found a new nursery area. This might be a result of the recovering whale populations of South Africa. Post the ban on whaling, our humpback whale and southern right whale populations are growing at 9% and 7% respectively, and they are recolonizing old areas where they were previously found. Now the question then arose that how could all this development, what kind of impact could it have on these whales? We know that whales are very sensitive to shipping noise because of the low frequency, but we knew very little about how mother whales and their babies were bonding. We don't know if they bond by vocalization or if it's more of a physical phase that they bond initially before they go on their migrations down to the Antarctic feeding grounds. But the research question really was, what potential impact could this new deep water port have on these baleen whale mothers and their calves? And if it didn't have a negative impact, would that potentially lead to an increased risk of ship strikes? So we set out to really examine the soundscape of Algoa Bay with all the shipping that was going on there in comparison to the next bay to the west of Algoa Bay, St. Francis Bay, which has very little commercial shipping and some recreational boats and fishing boats, but nothing in the scale of the large port. So I'm on the beach here in Port Elizabeth. You can see Algoa Bay behind me and the port of Port Elizabeth to my right, and the new port development with all the ships lying in front of it, the port of Kucha at the far end of the bay. And the reason the research we're doing here is so interesting at the moment is that we are now able to combine the historical aspect using the marine mammal collection at the Port Elizabeth Museum and really looking at global change over the last few decades, and combining that with the work we're doing in Algoa Bay and in Eastern Cape waters on current new developments and anthropogenic impacts that result from that on the marine mammals in our waters. So the combination of these two scenarios, from using material from the collection and data from the field studies, allows us to then really look at cumulative or multiple impacts on the marine mammal populations in our waters and to tease apart what is really affecting them. So some of these impacts, for example, are the changes in prey over the last few decades. Looking at stomach contents and isotopes, we can determine if there's been a substantial change in the prey base for these animals in relation to global change. We're also starting to look more at pollutants in conjunction with that, and parasites, and looking at the interplay of parasites and pollutants with the prey and the predator, so the dolphin.